And away we go. All right, everybody. It is June the 2nd, 2026. I am Joe, also known as the Stoic Viking, and today we are going to be covering human optimization. I wanted to go over hormone replacement therapy, TRT, peptides, and a lot of the kind of myths, everything that you sort of hear about it, how I first heard about it, research I have done in the whole process, what are the best in use, what are the best use cases, what are the pitfalls, everything like that. So, hey, what's up, everybody? All right, so we're gonna start with let's get in here. All right. Let me get into my notes. What's up, everybody? Goose Cap Onuzuka. What's up, brothers? It's good to see you guys. All right. So, actually, I do need to do one thing real quick. I need to take something out of my teeth. All right, we are back. All right. So, always trying to clean my teeth as much as possible, trying to get them pearly whites, stuff like that. You know how it is. All right. So, we are back. So, human optimization, TRT, peptides, replacement therapy, and just your overall longevity explained. How do we combat the problems of aging, performance, while also avoiding a lot of the ramifications that come with taking shortcuts, which, a lot of things that could be good for you, but if mistimed, either taking them too young or overusing them, all these things are a constant risk whenever you introduce some sort of foreign, whether it's a medication or some other foreign entity. Anytime that you put something in your body, even if it's something that's like aspirin or something, there's a positive effect almost with everything that you put in your body. There is a negative effect, right? Does that positive effect outweigh the good? And what are in certain situations, even the things that are tended to be good for you can have farther negative ramifications on you. So that's something you should always take into consideration when dealing with medication and any other sorts of types of therapy. So, because everybody wants a shortcut, nobody wants to take forever to get to their goals, whether it's, you know, you want to get stronger, you want to get faster. What are some of the best ways to get there? Maybe you're talking about testosterone, an injection, a peptide. Everybody wants that secret protocol. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are trying to optimize a system that they hadn't even built yet. Can I take a drug that just automatically makes me strong? But before we discuss TRT, peptides, hormones, longevity medicine, recovery and performance information, we need to discuss the foundation. Because if your sleep sucks, your diet sucks, you don't train, you're overweight, and your stress is out of control, you have no amount of hormones, or no, the no amount of hormones, peptides, protein supplements, or biohacks are going to save you. So tonight or this afternoon, depending on where you're at, tonight we're going to separate some of the science from the hype. We're going to hear some of the, naysayers, people who are like, oh, beware of this stuff. We're going to see people who are really for this type of stuff, and we're going to see some nuanced responses, some videos, people, some doctors who are going to go over specific clips, especially from one of the most recent Sean Ryan episodes where they covered peptides. So, is it a new Onizuka, is it considered good 6 hours of sleep? I believe that's considered the minimum. I think most people get between 6 and 8. Um, there is a point of optimization, and everybody's different, and that's you're going to hear that quite a bit. Everybody's body is different, but I think that there is no trial of human sleep that anything less than 6 hours is good, right? I think that you want to get anywhere between 6 and 8. 8, I believe, is the gold standard. Depending on whoever you are, you can't go wrong with 8. But if you can only manage 6, hey, some people operate pretty well on 6. I'm somebody who probably operates pretty well on just 6 hours of sleep, but you definitely feel better. Even I do when I get 8, if I can. So depending on your schedule, if you can, anything less than 6, you are going to go down an unhealthy route. You're going to go into sleep debt. You're going to cause a whole number of different issues, both mentally and physically. Your recovery is going to suck. Your hormones are going to tank. It's just not good. Yeah, get at least 6 hours of sleep. So most people think that optimization is TRT, peptides, biohacking, longevity, ice bath supplements, but optimization is simply maximize your potential. If you have zero effort, you know what? If you times zero by whatever it is, think of that as optimization, it's still going to be zero. So if you don't go to the gym, you taking steroids or testosterone is not suddenly going to make you bigger, right? And yeah, you could take you know, what is the GLP-1, the Ozempic, and yeah, you may lose weight, but when you come off of it, if you have shitty habits, you're just going to put the weight back on, right? So if you want something to last, you have to understand that you already have to have a decent foundation for you to even optimize. Optimize does not replace good habits and a good foundational physical and healthy structure. But optimization is simply maximizing your potential physically, mentally, emotionally, and professionally. The goal isn't necessarily living longer. The goal is to live better. So what is your health span versus your lifespan? Would you rather live to 100 but bedridden? Or would you rather live to 85, strong, active, and independent? I think most people would choose the latter. What about nootropics, multivitamins, and natural herbs? Since you're on the topic of sleep, well, one, we can, so we're not going to quite get into nootropics and multivitamins and natural herbs. That's definitely a video that we could do on another topic. This specifically, I'm covering TRT, peptides, and sort of what you're thinking of is like performance medicine. Obviously, some of else can be concluded, but we're going to keep nootropics, creatine. We can leave that for another video. I've covered some of that, but nootropics is probably something I should probably cover in a later video. But Be Dangerous Group, since you're on the topic of sleep, how do you get better sleep? Specifically supplementation. I'm tired when I go to sleep, but struggle with staying asleep. I am usually up to 4 to 6 hours. There are a couple things that you can help with sleep. And honestly, I would stay, you're probably going to hear, what is the one that helps you go to sleep? It is not, obviously, I'm not talking about Ambien. It's the, like, you can buy them. They help you go to sleep. I'm trying to think of it. It is. So some of the things that I take is magnesium and L-threonate. I know that one of those off the top of my head, it's downstairs in my cabinet, but there are some things that are actually really good supplements that can actually help you to calm your mind. Yes, there it is, Abagos. Yes, melatonin, right? So melatonin, while it does help you go to sleep, it does not help you to stay asleep. Like, so that's kind of the things that they've learned about melatonin is like, it's not the greatest thing for you. It's like, it helps you to initially fall asleep, but doesn't help you to stay asleep. And I believe that it's L-threonate. That helps you, or it might be, let's just see. So there's L-threonate. It's a magnesium supplement. It might be the other one. Well, I will try to make more of a better video on it, but a lot of things there are a lot of things you can do to help you get to sleep, right? So one of them is obviously physical stress, working out. That will definitely help you to regulate a lot of the hormones that assist you to have a better night's sleep. Managing your stress is definitely a good part. A lot of these things you'll notice there's a link between a lot of the things that you do during the day will help you to sleep better at night. And obviously, there are some supplements that you can use to help you to calm that tired mind. I know one of the things that I struggle with sometimes is falling asleep because I'm so active throughout the day. I always feel like I should be doing something. So when I get in bed, I'm like, now what do I do? The thing that helps me the most, and also I have a Kindle. So one, probably you guys have heard, you don't want to be looking at your screens because the blue light effect sort of reawakens your brain and it makes it much harder for your brain to calm so you can go to sleep. So I like to use a Kindle. And then I fall asleep very quickly after reading. So that's how I personally help myself to go to sleep when I feel like I don't. Maybe because reading is such a hard and arduous task for an ogre like myself. So that it is what it is. I just bought a magnesium sleep complex supplement. Melatonin put me to sleep, but it gives me crazy dreams while I consider poor night's sleep. Thanks for responding. Yes, so that's something that melatonin does. It will help you fall asleep initially, but it does not give you overall a better night's sleep. Something like magnesium is way better for you just in general throughout the entire day and helps you to go to sleep. If I had the thing with me, it's downstairs. You know what? No, I didn't bring it up. I'll find it later. Anyways. Yeah, audiobooks also help me a ton. I do that. But I personally find both audiobooks help me to fall asleep, but Kindles for me seem to be, they work the quickest. All right. So how do you build the foundation, right? Because remember, optimization doesn't work if everything you're doing is shit, right? You can't, it's like optimization is a multiplication factor, right? If you are at, you're operating at an arbitrary number, like we're operating at 100, right? That's our foundation. And we're increasing our optimization is going to help us our performance by 10%, right? What's, 100 by 0.10, 110. Math is hard, so don't quote me on that. But if you have a foundation that is garbage, you're at 0 and you're multiplying by whatever it is, it's still fucking 0. So gotta have a good foundation, right? And everything, because you cannot operate without sleep. Sleep is probably the foundation of everything, right? So sleep is your growth hormone release. It's your recovery. It's where it helps your testosterone production. And it is, the sort of basis of any sort of cognitive performance that you can have. Without sleep, you're going to be brain dead. Like they have so many, when they do studies and they can show you what your brain looks like when you've been sleep deprived, it's like very equivalent to what your brain looks like on drugs. It's ridiculous. Trust me, get sleep. I have been there. I was somebody who's always struggled to go to sleep, especially when I was younger. And when I finally started going to sleep like an adult, it took me longer than most people or people know, or do I care to admit. My life overall improved by finally going to sleep and getting enough sleep. And especially when you get older, one of the greatest things that I look forward to is sleep nowadays, which is crazy. So obviously, what's the other thing that you need to survive? Food. And that is now the other part of your foundation is nutrition. And that's your protein, that's your micronutrients, that's your hydration. And obviously, if you don't want to gain weight and not be a fat ass, or you want to lose weight, it's all about calorie control. And then next is how to perform your physical body, right? Probably, as we know, that especially the last couple of years has proven the most effective way to increase your body's like overall effectiveness and overall health is resistance training, and specifically high stress physical strength training. You build muscle mass, it improves your bone density and your overall metabolic health. You know, cardio, right? And obviously you can throw this in a whole different number of categories, these terms, everything like that. But this is where you're building that heart muscle, because remember, your heart's a muscle. That's your heart health, your VO2 max, and this is also going to help with your longevity. And then the other part of that is is your stress, right? And this can a whole other subject about the things that the stress management is a lot of the things that you actually can control, right? By whether the things that you put in your life or how you interpret them mentally, how you frame them mentally, right? And so your stress management is going to be affected through, if you have bad stress management, it's going to affect your cortisol, your recovery, your hormones, and your overall mental health. And you got to remember, like with all these like peptides and TRT, or you're injecting stuff, you cannot out inject bad habits. It's just not going to happen. Just trust me. So, retired, all of us ogres struggle to read. Yes, we do. These are facts. How much is important to have a good sleep at a young age when we have to manage our studies, earning, and tying to build a stable future? Sleep, food, sex, 3 survival needs. All right, so we'll go back to AK Shaja. I'm going to say it like that. So it's important at every age, right? Obviously, when you're younger, you are sort of more malleable, you're more resilient. Like sleep is probably not going to affect you as badly as it is when you're older, but you still have the same similar negative mental effects. There's a lot of videos and a lot of studies that you can look at of where they are like watching the brain, what happens when people are sleep deprived. And it's very equivalent to you're basically being on drugs and you're almost like extremely mentally inhibited. And I know that I have been through so many things in my military, whether it's operations or even like my multiple trips to different SEER schools where, there's definitely like a couple days where you're not eating and you're not sleeping. Yeah, like your brain, you feel like you're on drugs, like, and it's just like things are just not working. And obviously, can you do it? Can you sacrifice sleep to get a task done? Absolutely. It should. Yeah, you definitely, sometimes you got to do it, right? But if you are making that, like, let that be something that you react to, is like, hey, this is a one-off situation. But if you are going about your life and just not getting enough sleep, that is perpetually just going to make things worse for you, both mentally, cognitively, your hormones, everything's just going to go downhill. And you just overall are not going to be healthy. You're going to do worse in the gym. Pretty much everything's going to be affected if you don't get enough sleep, right? You can do it one-offs, but don't make it a habit. Trust me. Yeah, sleep, food, sex, the trifecta, one would say. Dr. Sean O'Mara and Dr. Berry have a good one over visceral fat. O'Mara, ex-POTUS doctor, has studied sprinting is huge visceral fat around the organs, and not my clams, all theirs. Awesome. Well, Akshajad, I think I'm saying that right. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. I believe you sent me an email that I just saw. If you did, I will respond to it later this evening. But appreciate you watching while you're doing your assignments. I'm disciplined in so many things, but I can't get right on my eating. I will wake up in the middle of the night and eat, and I need to work so much better on that. Yes, Goosecap, that is a very common thing. And I will be completely honest with you, in which a lot of people don't really want to admit, is that food, while it is necessary, food is an addiction, right? You have to remember that human beings, especially at the beginning of, thousands of years ago, when caveman days into, the prehistoric, going into Egyptian, to turn of the, Roman times, everything like that, people did not eat 3 square meals a day. right? This concept that you have to eat 3 meals a day is really just more of a modern thing because our bodies are designed, we don't have to eat every single day, right? Is there some sort of like optimization, maybe like once a day, some things like that, but we definitely don't need food 3 times a day. We have condition our bodies to believe that we have, especially in the modern times, like, oh, you have to have breakfast, you have lunch, you have dinner. Remember, a lot of people used to think that the breakfast was the most important meal of the day. This was also around the time when the most accepted nutrition model was the food pyramid. I think we all know how that turned out. Not so well. So you have to, like anything that is an addiction, you have control over it, right? It is hard. No addiction is easy, right? Like it's an addiction for a reason, but there are things that you need to do in order to understand that. I just went through a 5-day fast, and I obviously it helps me from a lot of physiological and health reasons. But one of the reasons why I do stuff like that is to exercise my discipline, because that's in its own way. It's kind of a muscle itself. I need to exercise it. I need to practice it. So learning how to say no to food when you are hungry is a skill, because I'm gonna be honest, one of the reasons why you're hungry all the time is because you eat all the time. If you go through this, right, and you don't eat as much, like if you're somebody who fasts, if you fast long enough, you are not going to be hungry during those fasting portions because your body's gotten used to it. You've trained your body to eat 3 times a day, if not more. So during this fasting process, one of the other added effects it does is it resets my appetite. So I have went back to, now that I'm back off the fast, I have returned to essentially almost intermittent fasting. I will still do some protein in the morning, but basically I don't eat until basically dinner. And that's just something that I do to manage me eating, because I can eat a lot of food. I'm a fat ass. I will eat 10,000 calories in a single sitting and not even break a sweat. It's pretty sad. I can tell you, I can gain weight like nobody's business, but I control myself because I can eat so much, right? It's all willpower at the end of the day. It's your decision. You don't have to pick up that food. Can you make it easier by training yourself in your body not to feel as hungry? Yes, that's a process. So, all right. Appreciate you, Goose Scott. Good question. All right. So the first thing we're going to cover before we get into peptides is one of the more well-researched and well-known is going to be covering TRT and steroids, and which is testosterone replacement therapy, right? And what do we know about testosterone, right? First of all, it's it's naturally produced in the body, and for us men, it is one of the most important things within our bodies. So what does testosterone affect? It affects energy, recovery, mood, libido, that's your sex drive, muscle mass, bone density, confidence, and cognitive performance. So yes, your testosterone even helps you up in the gray. But testosterone isn't magic. It's simply one of the most important hormones in the male body. So if you haven't heard the term, and I'm trying to practice this, hope I don't butcher this, hypogonadism. I think the D is silent. Hypogonadism. So TRT was originally designed to treat hypogonadism. Sorry, just don't come at me because I'm screwing up the pronunciation of this word. All right, give me a fucking break. So hypogonadism is the inability to produce enough testosterone for normal physiological function. So it's usually measured in nanograms per deciliter, right? And you're going to hear like terms like, oh, my testosterone is at 500 or it's above that. That when you hear someone say just that like number, it's usually somewhere between like 100 and 1,000. That's nanograms per deciliter. So having established that, most human beings, right, and they're like your college players, Division I, your Olympic athletes, the males, the most optimized level of testosterone in nanograms per deciliter is going to be somewhere between 800 and 1,000, right? That's prime. That's optimum. Like that's at the best time of your life. You're like late teens, early 20s. That's where, over time it starts to go down. And eventually hypogonadism is like you stop producing enough testosterone that it gets really, really low, which is obviously because your testosterone is moved for a lot of other things, mood, muscle mass, libido, bone density, all these different things. When it gets so low, that's when it's basically considered hypogonadism because it's so low that it doesn't support normal physiological function, right? And so what are the symptoms when your testosterone is so low that you now have hypogonadism? The physical, fatigue, poor recovery, loss of muscle, increased body fat, because not only does testosterone help you to build muscle, it actually helps you to shed fat as well. Mentally, brain fog, reduced motivation, depression-like symptoms. And obviously this can affect your mental, which is the sexual, which is the low libido. And one of the biggest issues besides low libido is ED, erectile dysfunction. It's just, if you have ED, it doesn't matter if you have a libido because you're not getting it up anyway. So, and this could then lead into the mental. And this is just like a cascading snowball effect, which is just not good. So hypogonadism, I'm butchering this word, I know I am. So primary hypogonadism is the testes are the problem and the factory is broken. It's an interesting analogy. I looked that one up. Secondary hypogonadism is the signaling system is the problem. The factory works, but the management isn't giving instructions. I like to break things down into, retard levels. So that's what these analogies are for. So understanding testosterone levels, right? So a typical healthy range is listed as 300 to 1,000, right? And that's nanograms per deciliter, or NG/DL, if you want to see how it's written. Many men report feeling best around 700 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter, which is like going back to if you are an active athlete, right? And especially you're in elite level, Olympics, whatever, or you're just competing at a high level. It doesn't have to be the Olympic level. You're going to want to be as close to 1,000 as you can. But there's no magic number. Every person is different. So when you're dealing with testosterone, there's a couple other things that are involved. And that's just because, so when I say these numbers, I'm technically what I'm doing is I'm talking about the total testosterone. And there's another way that's not the full picture, right? Because there's something that's called free testosterone, right? But when you're hearing this specific number, we're actually looking at what's called the total testosterone. So, but what is free testosterone? So total testosterone versus free testosterone is one of the biggest misunderstandings in hormone therapy. So testosterone is everything that's circulating in bloodstream. Think of it as like your total net worth. Free testosterone is the testosterone that's available to actually do work. So think about it's cash in your checking account. So as an example, all right, so we got man number one. He's got 900 total testosterone. Feels great. You have man number two, 900 total of low free testosterone, feels terrible, same total testosterone, but completely different experience, right? So these guys have the same total testosterone, but one has a high level of free testosterone and the other one has a low. And obviously the one who has low free testosterone, he's feeling sort of the negative effects of the lack of testosterone, even though he has a total testosterone, right? So there's another thing that's called in here. It's called SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin. I'm not a doctor. I didn't practice this shit. But these act like handcuffs on testosterone. So if you have a higher SHBG, you have less free testosterone. So the simplest explanation is total testosterone tells you how much testosterone you have. Free testosterone tells you how much testosterone you can actually use or your body is going to use for your overall primary benefits. So that's And there's a number of ways to measure free testosterone and to get into the weeds of just going past total testosterone. But I just want to explain that there is a difference. So if you hear the different terms, understand it's another way to rate it. But overall, the higher total testosterone you have, generally the better. There are some things that can affect how much lower or higher, but you're typically not going to have a total testosterone, a high level, and then have a lower free testosterone, but your testosterone is tanking as if you had a low one. It's in a range. Okay. I just want to establish that so everybody knows what we're talking about. People come in here, shoot me down. All right. I pretend to know what I'm talking about. At least I try to. I've done enough research. Okay. And if I'm butchering the terms, forgive me now. All right. Appreciate you guys. All right. So let's go through some questions before we go to the next section. All right. Let's see here. Oh man, you guys are crushing it. All right. So not just from running, but more importantly, intensity running and low intensity running. You can run multi-marathons and still have heart attacks. Sprinting strengthens the heart and the muscle. Absolutely. You'll notice, and I can make a whole video about this. I'm personally not the biggest fan of long distance running, but luckily research says it's not the greatest thing for you anyways. Yeah, obviously you can be extremely healthy and fit, but definitely the stronger you are, whether that's in how much you can lift or how fast you are, and that usually is the speed. Like you can tell the difference between marathon. Just look at the difference what a marathon runner looks like versus what a sprinter looks like, right? I can tell you that one of the guys that I went to selection with in OTC, we went to a performance institute to do a internship, you will, and we did a DEXA scan. If anybody knows what a DEXA scan, it's basically like an X-ray machine for your lean muscle, and it's probably the most accurate way to depict how much lean muscle and fat you have in your body. And a lot of people thought that the most fit guy in the room was because one of the guys in my selection OTC class was an ultra marathon runner. And that ultra marathon runner, when we got on the DEXA scan, a lot of people who didn't quite understand, because it was the first couple of days of this internship with Athlete Performance Institute, is they thought he was going to have one of the lower body fats because he was a really skinny guy. He actually ended up having the highest body fat level in the entire class, right? Because you don't really need muscles to do long distance running, and they need fat in order to be the fuel for how much they're running. So having in your body, the more muscle you have, the overall strength you are going to have, just overall health you're going to have, right? You're going to be, your heart's going to work better. Like your organs are generally going to work better. Your circulatory system is going to work. Your bones are going to work better because when you lift and you press and you stress those bones, you create more bone density, right? Like just overall is better. So going back to his point, which is there's a reason why strength running, sprinting is overall better for your health than long distance running. But if you like to long distance run, nothing wrong with this. Still good cardio exercise. Just, has some other ramifications on your joints and things like that. And plus I just get bored. So I may have confirmation bias, but I was like happy to see that long distance running is not the greatest thing for your health, your overall health. Right. So leave it at that. Do you ever get weak from fasting? I feel the one time I tried, but maybe I have to break the barrier to get where I need to be. No. So you're going to feel probably weak, probably during the fast, and you might feel a little weak a couple days after the fast, but generally your body will recover, right? I actually feel pretty good. And I actually, during my fasting phase, I still hit my progression in my workouts. So I actually hit everything I was still supposed to hit. The only one that I didn't try was my squat day. I didn't go heavy on squats. I just did 225 and I did pause sets at the bottom where I go to ass to calves, sit there for 2 seconds and then pop back up. So in my second month, it's life changing if you are low. Voodoo Cast, are you saying you're on TRT, my friend? If you are, let me know what your original number was when you got on it. Because I'm going to tell you guys right now, I just started 2 weeks ago, TRT. So I'm 41 years old and I've actually been tracking my testosterone. So my testosterone has been between 550 and 350 for the last like 3 years. And I have all the documentation shows it. So for the first time in my life, starting 2 weeks ago, at 41 years old, I just started the TRT, where I'm in the attempt to bring it up somewhere near 1,000. So I just started my second week on it, but I'm actually going to do another video about this specifically. And the company that I'm actually partnering with, who is helping me through this process, which is Human Performance TRT, but we'll get into that later. So body has essential 90 essential amino acids, fact, vitamins, and minerals required for human health. Look up all 90. It's great. Okay. What makes me mad is doctors have treated all the symptoms since my 20s without even mentioning TRT. And what you also remember, and we're going to get into this, is that knowledge of health and science and nutrition has constantly evolved. Remember, doctors and most experts, they're guessing off of what they believe to be correct based off the current knowledge, right? And as science has progressed, like with any field in science, we learn that maybe some of the things that we thought were wrong, right? So it's a constant process. Luckily, things are getting better, obviously in the health nutrition space, which is good. So I appreciate that. Exactly. You're not a doctor, but you stayed at a Holiday Inn. I did prior to this video, just to be sure. I'm 35 and having a hard time gaining weight, yet getting stronger. 6 drive, so large. Yet VA tested me and said my levels are fine. Would you assess getting tested for a private clinic? Yes. All right. So anybody knows, you can look up so many different videos about this. The VIA sucks when it comes to trying to get TRT, right? Like it might even take you like 2 years. There are some good private clinics out there that can help you. So I'm partnering with Human Performance TRT, and it is actually a company that was co-founded with actually Brent Tucker from Delta Force, the Tier 1 podcast. I will put a link in this live later on. I don't have it on me right now, but it will be sort of my affiliate link for them. So if you're interested because these guys, look, TRT peptides is like the Wild Wild West. These guys are trying to do everything right and be the gold standard of, basically not cutting corners in this particular human performance medication industry, if you want to call it something. So I will add that down below. Wow, that makes good sense on my test results, but I feel tired sometime. Maybe it's time to look at, and then call me Gus. Okay. Are peptides taken in lieu of amino acid supplements, or can both be taken for increased benefits, or would that be redundant? No. So I'll get into that. So you're probably thinking of you're obviously, because we've been taking amino acid supplements, right? And which is, your BCAAs, right? And peptides are basically BCAAs, but they're more targeted to a specific sort of, like, think of it as like a messenger to a specific protein that you want to activate of something sort of your body's condition that has either slowed down or has like turned off, right? And usually this happens because either we get some sort of health condition or they start to slow down or turn off as we get older. And that is the point of peptides, but we're going to get into that. So many times the most fit looking jack guys fail. Yeah. Just because you look jacked doesn't mean anything. Muscle equals longevity. The people closest to death are old people with no muscle and loose skin. Absolutely. There is, especially in the last like 10 to 20 years, just the benefits of strength training, right? Resistance training, where you are pushing yourself, because in order to build muscles, you have to stress your muscles to the point where they basically rip open, and then new muscles synthesis, the muscle synthesis creates new muscles in place. The same thing even works for your bone density, right? Like you're stressing your bones, which then creates greater bone density. So this is all about, that's why so far what we have is the greatest way to stay healthy is strength training, right? Because everything that's good that we need to cause in your body to make it stronger, organs, strength, muscle, bones, everything is done right now. The best form to do that is strength training, right? And specifically in a progressive overload system, because if you go to the gym and you pick up some little tiny weights and you can do like 30 reps, you're not stressing your body properly, right? That's where the progressive overload system comes in as well. That makes you feel we're going to be there, we're going to do it right, if that makes sense. Not to be rude, but is this live relevant for me? That all depends. Because the current topic is not to be rude, but is the live relevant for me because the current topic is not relevant for me. If it's not, it's not. Today we're just talking human optimization. It was 46 6 months ago. I'm still waiting for my current numbers really low. Are we going to get into meditation? I watched an interview with the CIA agent talking about how health bill benefits of it. Did they teach you any of this in the ISA? So yes, they did. Not to get off topic, but yes, they did teach us meditation techniques, and there's a lot of different applications for this. But I'm not going to particularly go into meditation in a way is like mental framing and calmness, right? You can be used in a couple of different ways, and for everybody, it could affect you in lots of different ways. So, but yes, we did learn meditation, and I have used it or in my own version of it, of the shit that works for me. All right. So we are going to, let's get into this. All right. So what I want to do now is we are going to, let's get into, all right, real quick. I do want to cover this because we're talking about TRT. Everybody, when you hear TRT, which is testosterone replacement therapy, and you're going to hear people steroids, people anabolic steroids, people being on gear, right? So what is the difference, right? Because are you taking a different compound, different things like that? At the end of the day, it's basically there's a way to properly increase your testosterone, and there's a bad way to do it, right? To overdo it, right? So TRT is the way to replace that testosterone level to normal, optimum human levels. And anabolic steroids or being on gear is the way to go past that. And that's where you're usually going to run into problems. But there's also even a way to abuse TRT, right? If we're going to separate those into two archetypes, right? So steroids, so TRT is that restoration. Do you restore healthy hormone levels? Like, for example, taking it from 250 all the way back to 800. That's your goal, is to restore normal function. Steroids is like to exceed normal human steroids is enhancement, which is exceeding normal human physiology, like taking it from 800 to like 3,000 plus, right? Performance enhancement. TRT is like fixing a broken engine. Steroids is like adding turbochargers, nitrous, and racing fuel. And if anybody knows, especially if you're a car mechanic, turbochargers, nitrous, and racing fuel is bad for the overall like longevity of a car, right? Good analogy, because in doing enhancement or doing steroids, being on gear is going to hurt you long term. All right. So TRT benefits: better energy, better recovery, better libido, better mood, better quality of life. Steroid benefits, right? If you're going to exceed that human level, yeah, there's some benefits. Yeah. You're going to get a rapid level of muscle growth, increasing strength, and the like faster, like it's just recovery, right? When you're on it, you can work out for days. Like you just recover so quickly. So in the simplest explanation is TRT brings a man back to normal. Steroids will take a normal man beyond normal, like, to the next level, if you will, right? So in the modern age, right, the problem that we get into, and I'm going to go into a video right after this, is the modern steroid obsession, right? And we're going to watch a video and we're going to talk about it, right? But what the problem is like everybody sees everybody who's jacked, right? And now TRT is in order to replace, testosterone that you naturally lose, right, over time. So typically happens to people in their 40s, age. Everybody does it at their own rate. There are a few people who can have a certain symptom or a certain condition, if you will, that can affect their testosterone. But typically, if you're in your if you're in your high teens and you're in your 20s, you do not need additional testosterone. So what the problem is nowadays you get these 18, your 20s, your clavicular, all these dudes who are taking testosterone in their teens and early 20s, right? Because they want that shortcut. The problem is TRT, even if you're in your 40s, it has ramifications, right? One of the biggest ones is you stop producing sperm, and that technically could be recovered, right? Once you get off of it, your body could restart making sperm, but sometimes it doesn't. So if you were to start at like 18 and get on testosterone replacement therapy, start at testosterone, now the risk, especially if you're on it for at least 2 years, to be infertile for the rest of your life, right? And there's other hair loss, and other things like that. For guys who get to your 40s, right? Obviously, you have a choice. Hey, maybe you've already kids at that point. Maybe you don't need to be fertile. I've naturally dropped my testosterone. I want to return it to normal levels. And you take those risks and you weigh them, right, to the possible benefits. But when you're in your 20s, there's no point of doing this, right? You're taking now shortcuts, which are going to affect yourself long term, right? And so that's kind of what the more modern steroid obsession is guys who are taking things like TRT because it's become much more accessible. And you've got teens and kids in their 20s doing it, right? Because social media has created this physique arms race, if you will, bigger, leaner, more shredded, more extreme every year, right? So young men compare themselves to enhanced physiques every single day. Many don't even realize what they're even looking at. But most men do not need testosterone. 18 to 25-year-old, most men are 18 to 25 years old. They already possess some of the highest natural testosterone levels they'll ever have. Yet they may immediately want enhancement. Because why? To take that shortcut. And obviously with any shortcut, we're going to have ramifications. So what happens when you take testosterone? Your brain detects that you're taking testosterone. So your natural production of testosterone decreases because it's like, hey, we're getting it from somewhere else. We no longer need to produce it. And sometimes we'll shut down completely, right? Once you eventually get off of it, obviously it will eventually start back up. Then that's where the conversation is, especially for men. Now that we've bottomed out and we need time for the system to realize, hey, we're no longer producing it. We are now producing more estrogen than testosterone, and then you'll take an estrogen blocker. But just know that it takes time to come back on. So the potential consequences of doing testosterone, and this works for everybody, is fertility issues because of reduced sperm production, your testicular atrophy, hormonal independence, and an endocrine disruption. So, because the part that nobody talks about is everyone talks about getting on, but nobody talks about getting off of it. So here's the other part, right? If you were to get on, so also for guys who get in TRT who are in their older age, their 40s, like, hey, we don't care about fertility, they can be on it for the rest of their time, especially if you don't care about hair loss. Like you're already bald, dude, already had your kids. Pretty much there's like really no negative effect that you're going to have by returning your testosterone to normal levels. But if you're in your 1820s, right, and you're doing it for a little bit, you're on a cycle, maybe you're above enhancement levels. Remember all the gains that you get through increasing your testosterone, especially when you're enhancing it past normal levels, they are temporary, right? So if you gain muscle while you're on gear, as soon as you get off gear, you're going to deflate. You're going to lose it, right? So not only are you going to experience like your hormones are going to basically tank because you're getting off of this, because now your testosterone is no longer there. You're no longer going to have testosterone for at least a couple of weeks. It's going to take some time to redo it. So all the things that testosterone gives you, whether it's your mood, your libido, all these different things, that's going to tank and that's not going to be there for a while. And then also you're going to deflate. So you're also going to have negative mental like effects. Like you're going to have that body dysmorphia, like, oh, where did all my muscle go? And you're just going to mentally, you're going to go down, you're going to spiral, right? Because you have to remember these gains are temporary. You will not keep them. You'll gain muscle, strength, confidence, attention. And then when you come off, now you're comparing yourself to your enhanced self. This is not sustainable. You've seen so many of these actors and famous people like The Rock and people like that who've been on gear their entire life. And the second they come off of it, it's like they're like half the person. They basically completely deflated. And you're going to, like I said, you're going to talk about that hormonal crash, because after coming off, low testosterone, low energy, low libido, poor recovery, brain fog, mood issues. And now combine the both of them, loss of physique plus your hormonal instability. You're going to struggle significantly during this period. And then then there's like the cycle trap, where most people don't stay on because most people don't stay on because they love being on. They stay on because they hate being off of it, right? And that's a big thing. So, but why does TRT make sense later in life? So a healthy 22-year-old and a 52-year-old, both with hypogonadism, are not having the same conversation. One is pursuing enhancement. The other one is pursuing restoration. All right. So, but you got to remember, the thing is, like, your testosterone isn't what builds you into a strong man, right? It's what you are built. What builds a strong man is years of discipline before testosterone ever entered the conversation, right? Going back to, none of this makes sense if you don't have a fucking foundation of like good training, good eating, good habits, right? Because you can't optimize crap habits. Optimization really works if you have good habits, right? So if you don't have a good foundation, you shouldn't care about human optimization, right? First of all, get to like a human standard before you can fucking even optimize. If that makes fucking sense. So, all right. Let me answer some questions, and we're going to go into some videos about TRT. So is CrossFit good or too tough on your body at 40 plus? So, Guskop, any type of training. So the problem why CrossFit sort of went out of popularity, if you will, because a lot of CrossFit gyms, there were some good CrossFit gyms, right? But they cared more about whatever weights you were doing, whatever PR you're trying to get, whatever the time for your workout of the day, your WOD was. They cared more about that than your form, and people started getting hurt, right? So what is typically CrossFit? CrossFit is like Olympic lifting combined with like cardio almost, if you will, right? If you really kind of break it down, obviously it's probably a bit of an explanation, but that's a simplified version. Any sort of training, if you're doing it right with a proper level of form, it's going to be effective, right? But that's the problem with CrossFit, and why it kind of went out, and why a lot of CrossFit gyms got screwed, is because there's so many injuries, because people stopped caring about form. Form is everything. If you are lifting and you are doing strength and you don't want to hurt yourself, because if you hurt yourself, you're just going to set your self back so far, and then there was no point of all the training you were doing anyways. Form. If you don't have form, one, you're not going to build muscle, because you need the proper form to build the proper muscle you're trying to do anyways. And then if you're doing bad form, not only are you not going to build that muscle, you're going to hurt yourself. So you can do CrossFit, just do it with good form. There's a lot of benefits to Olympic lifting and that building of that VO2 max that you see in a lot of CrossFit workouts. There's definitely some really good benefits. I'm injecting Monster Energy. Silver Soldier, bro. I wish I had a Monster right now. We basically had that stuff on IVs. So TRT is lowering lifespan, even though it improves quality of life. Generally, I believe most people who train hard in their 40s or 50s don't need it. I follow some other guys that kill it. So we're also going to get into some videos where they talk about if you are not overdoing testosterone and you don't care about, obviously, the side effects of infertility, hair loss, things like that, there's evidence that it doesn't actually shorten your life. That actually helps to improve your life, because testosterone is a natural occurring thing within your body. But like anything that's naturally occurring, you can overdo it and it can have negative side effects. So remember to fill your freezer with your sperm. Make sure to vacuum seal it. Just kidding for those who don't get it. Yeah. So I will having say this: if you are somebody who's in your 40s who are getting into TRT and you possibly still want to have kids, go to a clinic, get your sperm frozen, right? What made you get heavily into human optimization? For me, it was Limitless. My family looks at me weird for the only drinking spring and coconut water. Eat all my lean protein in the same and talking. Final space. It's a good question. So I always believe in trying to optimize everything, whether it's my mind or my body. Like if you're not trying to get better every single day in the different aspects of who you are as a person, then what's the point? What are you doing with your life? Like, do you really just want to hit a point like, oh no, I'm good, right? Because not only does you optimizing and trying to get better every single day make you just overall a better person, it's going to make you live longer. And do you want to be that dude who's like 80 who's in a wheelchair, or do you want to be the dude who's 80 who's still like doing push-ups and just looking jacked in the gym, and people are like, dude, what, like you're going to make people who are in their 50s and 40s like, man, stop making me look so bad, bro. And I've met dudes like that. Like when I was in the unit, the CW5 who came in, who told me to leave the unit, this dude was in his late 50s and he had an 8-pack. It was just stupid, ridiculous, right? Like that's the dream, I was 30s and this guy had a better body than me. He was twice my age. So I haven't started taking peptides yet, Mr. Michael Prisco, but that is in the process. I will eventually give them a shot. I'm still doing more research on them, but I'm getting everything through human performance TRT. Voodoo Cast, I would be a great guest for this talk. Well, brother, send me an email. Maybe we make it happen. May have missed any experience with what BP 157. So we're gonna talk about the BP 157, the BPCs, all this stuff like that. All right, let's get into. All right, let me move this real quick. All right, let's watch our. All right. Our boy Chris Williams.
One of the other things that's been happening a lot recently is the rise in TRT usage among young men. Maybe in part due to hoping to elevate their mood, to improve the way that they feel. What's your opinion on what appear to be increasing numbers of young men using TRT?
I'm greatly concerned by it, truthfully. I think it's I think.
So if anybody doesn't know, Chris Williamson is this great, awesome, like probably one of the greater philosophers of our time. Honestly, if there's anybody who I fanboy over, it's Chris Williamson. But he has this guy on here, and this is, if anybody doesn't know, this is Dr. P. Atia. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is one of the leading doctors in the spaces of performance medicine. We're actually going to watch a couple. We're going to get a couple of videos from a couple different people so we can get different varying views. But you'll notice like there's going to have like probably more than one with Dr. Atia on it. And this guy he's definitely leading in the space. And as you listen to him, you can tell that this guy tries to look at things from every possible angle and isn't just trying to peddle a particular industry. Like he's trying to understand it from a human evolutionary physiological standpoint of view.
Again, a lot of men, I think, don't understand the risks of TRT. And while testosterone is a very safe therapeutic, I mean, if done correctly, it's as safe a hormone as there is. But if you're talking about a young guy who doesn't actually understand the impacts of testosterone on fertility, for example, later in life, doesn't understand what a physiologic dose is versus a super physiologic dose, and especially in the cases where.
So when he's talking about physiological dose versus that super physiological dose, that's basically him saying the physiological dose is you returning it to like at the most like 1,000, like the 800 to 1,000 nanograms per deciliter. That super physiological is exceeding that. That's that enhancement where you're going above normal human levels.
Guys have to get this stuff illegally. Then you introduce a whole new layer of contamination and all sorts of things like that. So net, I'm a little concerned, maybe a lot concerned. I also think, there are lots of clinics opening up that are kind of trying to circumvent some of these issues. And again, I think their motivation is to capitalize on an obvious interest, but they do so without, necessarily a nuanced approach to how to do this.
Take me through the risks of TRT. What are they, high level?
So it depends on if we're going to talk about TRT done correctly. Do you mean literally TRT, testosterone replacement therapy, or
that and its more malignant offshoots where people start to push dosages and stuff? Well, take us through, the range.
The malignant cousin would be your being on gear and your anabolic steroids.
Well, I would say let's start with what's sort of known in the medical world, right? So we'll start with kind of appropriate physician-administered testosterone replacement therapy.
For an appropriately aged individual.
For an appropriately aged individual at an appropriate physiologic dose.
Cool.
Okay, so the two big risks that people have historically been concerned with are prostate cancer and heart disease. So an increase in the risk of prostate cancer and an increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease. Both of these have been studied extensively, and I think we can make a very strong and compelling case that testosterone replacement therapy is not increasing the risk of prostate cancer at all, and it may in fact be decreasing the risk slightly. I've done an entire podcast, I think 2 podcasts on just that topic. That's how nuanced it is.
So mind you, right, this is him saying this, that if anything, it does not show any signs that it increases the level of prostate cancer. It also might possibly decrease it, but this is for the TRT side of things, right? Where we're just replacing it to normal levels. And he's going to get into it that does not, the testing has been done on that. It has not been done on when you exceed that level.
But again, to give you just one example, when we have a guy who has undergone a prostatectomy for prostate cancer, he's had his prostate removed, we will still use testosterone replacement therapy in that guy. So think about that. You have a guy who had prostate cancer, you will still give him testosterone replacement therapy if it's warranted or indicated post-prostatectomy. Now, do you do it and shut your eyes and never look again? Of course not. You're still monitoring his PSA every 3 months, and you're going to look for any sign of recurrence. And if there is, in fact, a recurrence, you would immediately cease it, because what we do know is testosterone would feed prostate cancer. But the point I'm making is around initiation. Is there any evidence that testosterone replacement therapy initiates prostate cancer? The answer is no, there is not. And there is some evidence to the contrary. The cardiovascular disease question is a little bit more difficult, and the data are a little bit more muddled, but on balance, they come out in the direction of TRT does not increase the risk of cardiovascular disease. Now, there was a big trial that was complete.
Are they sitting in the Jurassic Park lobby, or I assume this is I wonder what museum that they're green screening in the background. So you can supplement to your Peptides or not. So VoodooCast says that you can supplement, doesn't affect your testes now. Also, it just costs more. That doesn't surprise me. So we're going to get into this a little bit later, but there's a lot of things that you can supplement to. For example, one of the things that you can take for hair loss, because of increasing higher by adding testosterone, you can cause hair loss, right? But you can take finasteride, right? Are there effects to finasteride? Wow, I'm not that good at these pronunciation of these words. There's a possible loss of libido and things like that. All these things, like there's pause, there's benefits and effects usually with almost any medication that you're taking.
Did last year called the Traverse trial that gave men androgel, so topical testosterone, and followed them for, I want to say 3 or 4 years. And there was no increase in the incidence of ASCVD, atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. But there is, so at face value, that study was taken to mean, look, we have one more study, the biggest and best, that demonstrated no increase in the risk of cardiovascular disease with TRT. So the debate should be settled once and for all. I did a podcast on this, wrote a long newsletter on this, and the long and short of it is in my view, that's a slightly premature conclusion, because I don't think the Traverse study was done perfectly. Most importantly, it did not give men a high enough dose, in my view. So the men started out very hypogonadal with a total testosterone of somewhere between 1 and 300 nanograms per deciliter, but they were only replaced to about 600 nanograms per deciliter. And while that's a reasonable rate of replacement, I don't think it represents what's happening in the world. I mean, we replace patients to higher than that. We replace patients to 800 or 900. We're technically tracking free testosterone and not total testosterone, but usually to get somebody in the range of where we think a good free testosterone is, we will see a total testosterone that's easily in the 800, 900 nanogram per deciliter range. So it's possible the Traverse trial only answered the question, does low dose, or as one of my analysts put it, does testosterone light replacement therapy increase the risk of cardiovascular disease? And I think there we can say the answer is probably no.
Okay, and what about testosterone replacement therapy when it's done badly?
Yeah, so I think if you even think about it in the medical setting, I think testosterone can be given to very super physiologic levels, and I see patients getting super physiologic levels all the time. They come into our practice, they've been treated at some T clinic, and they walk in with a free testosterone of 35 nanograms per deciliter, which is like twice what you would consider reasonable. And part of the problem is we don't really know what everything goes out the window with what I said earlier. Now, can I say that doesn't increase the risk of prostate cancer initiation? I can't say that because I don't have the data. Can I really say that doesn't increase the risk of cardiovascular disease? No, I can't. It's also, by the way, creating a lot more erythrocytosis. So these people are making red blood cells at an alarming rate, and they need to be monitored very closely for increased blood viscosity.
Is that?
That's interesting. Like, these people are going to end up being, when you're too high, you've increased your super physiological level of testosterone, like you're basically on gear or steroids, you're creating too much blood.
I have a friend of a friend who donates blood every month.
Yeah,
is that's
why?
Because they're just making too much and it's too thick?
Correct.
Wow. I mean, good for the blood donation people.
Yeah. And again, the question is, if you have to give blood every month, if your bone marrow is so revved on that you have to give blood every month, do we run the risk that you're going to convert into polycythemia vera at some point, which is a disease now where all of a sudden you can't shut that process off? So
it becomes self-sustaining even once you've come off the TRT.
Yeah, again, I'm not suggesting that that's happening. What I'm asking is we don't know, right? And there's just a big unknown there. The other thing is once you start to get into these super physiologic doses, you start to run into other issues around a lot of estrogen and a lot of DHT. So you'll see these men who are on these super physiologic doses of testosterone also showing up on 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, which we could talk about why I'm not a huge fan of those.
And anybody who doesn't know, DHT is the basically the chemical or whatever it is. It's what causes hair loss, right? So finasteride is what blocks THT, DHT. So he's saying, especially on these super physiological levels, that this is why, like, guys who get on gear too early it's very common for them to lose their hair.
And on aromatase inhibitors, which I'm also not a fan of.
Is that to stop gyno and hair loss?
Yes.
Right.
And obviously I'm not a guy who takes hair loss very seriously, but I think it's a mistake to take a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor for hair loss. I think there are far better strategies if it matters. And I think, even though the risk of finasteride syndrome or post-finasteride syndrome is low, it's not zero, and it's potentially irreversible. And this is, I think, in a young man taking finasteride, again, if you're listening to this and you're on finasteride and you have no issues, you're fine. It's something that if you hasn't kicked in within 6 months, it's not going to kick in. But we do see men who have like a permanent loss of libido. This is reported in the literature.
That's what finasteride syndrome is.
Yeah. So basically, there's something about blocking DHT that might not be a great idea.
So this goes back to almost everything that you do, while it may improve something, it may have an effect on something else, right? That's just like that's kind of how it is with medicine. With every reaction, there's a reaction, right? That's how it works. So there's a lot of negative effects. It comes with, getting in by increasing your testosterone levels, whether it's to safe levels or to enhanced levels, right? There's no reason, if you were in your teens or your 20s, unless you have a specific condition where it creates nonasm, that you need to be on it, right? You're just creating effects, when long-term effects for absolutely no reason, when you can just get there naturally, right? Does it take longer? Absolutely. But it's sustainable, right? Anything that you do on gear is not sustainable. All right. Ask The Rock. All right. We are going to. All right. So we're going to go back to the next part. We're going to get off to testosterone. And then we're going to start getting into the thing that I wanted to do the most amount of research on, which is peptides. So you have to understand that, there could be a number of reasons why your testosterone is declining, right? So if you're going in to get your testosterone, getting your blood work, and you're trying to figure out what your testosterone is, you do have to understand that there may be certain things within your lifestyle that are affecting your testosterone. Like just replacing your testosterone is not just like if I've got low testosterone, that me just getting on testosterone replacement therapy is going to fix it, right? If you already have bad habits, it's not going to fix it. For example, if you're obese, you have poor sleep, you have chronic stress, you have a metabolic disease, environmental exposures, and just pure nutrition, this is not going to fix it, right? And this goes back to, you have to have a good foundation. If you don't, you're just, this is not going to fix it, right? So, you could get into things about Anavar and DECA, but we're not really going to. So, all right, now let's get into the next section, which is peptides. All right, we'll answer some questions first. All right. Let's see here. When the cyborg attacks, I'm taking D-ball. Yeah, you and me both, brother. Even on basic TRT peptides, you are smart. You get your regular testing. Absolutely. When you're going through this process, obviously you need to go through doctors, right? You need to go through physicians who actually give a shit about you, and not somebody who's just trying to sell a product. Like, that's very important, right? Be taking advice and being examined by somebody who cares more about you than they do about making money off of you. It's a good standard right there. What are natural options for increasing testosterone? TRT may not be an option for a lot of men. I asked my doctor and he said, shut me down, saying I don't have an issue with testosterone production. So this question I can unpack in a different ways, right? Just because one doctor says something does not mean that it's necessarily the case. Like, there's many doctors who believe a certain way, right? There are ones who think like, oh, you're fine with 500 testosterone, right? Okay, and a lot of people might be. But if you have a good foundation, like you are fit, like I've basically be doing everything at sub 500 testosterone level. And as my physician who believes that TRT is good for someone like me, essentially I'm doing life at half power. So that's one of the reasons why I'm doing TRT, is because I am somebody who has a good foundation. Like, I generally try to sleep well. I have good nutrition. I have good exercise, all these different things like that. So I'm a candidate within this, right? But you have to understand who is this advice coming from? Is it a doctor who looks like one? And I don't mean to judge, but maybe he's not physically the best person. Maybe doesn't believe in that, maybe, and you have to be a good candidate for as well. It's not just the person who the advice is coming from. You have to be a good candidate. But with almost anything, get multiple pieces of advice from different people, right? With different backgrounds. If you're older, hypogonadism. Be dangerous. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. See, look, if I'm screwing something up, pronouncing it, do what our boy Be Dangerous group just did. Helping a brother out. I appreciate you. Hypogonadism. Man, now I'm crushing it. I'm going to give you a star, brother. Look at you, crushing it. All right, same as high in HMB. If you're older, you aren't getting those back without supplements. Facts. All right. Peptides. So what are peptides? They are biological messengers, if you will. They are short chains of amino acids that tell the body to perform specific functions. Peptides and this is going to go back to what we talked about foundation, peptides are not some miracle drug. All right. Remember, these are basically amplifiers, which is probably the most important part of this peptide discussion. Remember, these are amplifiers. And what do I mean like that, right? Peptides are not magic. Good habits plus peptides will give you better results. Bad habits plus peptides will get you expensive bad habits with little to no results. So, because all these different things, you are amplifying certain things like your recovery. Like, what's the point of amplifying your recovery if you are not working out, if you don't get the proper nutrition, right? If like nutrition helps your recovery and you're working out and you're using the peptide to replace the nutrition, you're just creating a bad habit, right? And what happens when you get off the peptide? And then for people who get on like let's call them the weight loss peptides, like Ozempic, the GLP-1, yeah, you'll lose weight because you're killing your desire to eat. But when you get off of it, they're just going to be fat again, right? Because they have no foundation. They have no discipline. And yeah, it's going to get you there to be skinny because you're not eating. But what happens when you get off of it and now suddenly you want to eat? You're going to get fat again, right? So, all right. So we're going to go into, let's see. We got this testosterone. Oh, you know what? Give me 1 second. We've got peptides. All right. StreamYard. Oh, you know what? I'm on the wrong one. All right, you guys ready for some? All right, so we're gonna jump into some peptides, but we're gonna cover a few things from a little CBS report, some news, and I want to use this to set kind of the stage because remember, whenever there's something new, right? A new industry, there's a new medicine, right? There's gonna be people who are gonna be like, hey, this is awesome, versus people that they're like, no, this is horrible, stay away from it, fear mongering, right? Like most things, both ends of whatever an issue is, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, right? So we need to listen to both. So let's listen to some like CBS and NBC talking about peptides.
Latest. Well, you may have seen this on your social media feed. Peptides, they're the latest craze with people touting their alleged biohacking effects. Some also use them for weight loss. But now some health officials are telling medical professionals to stop prescribing or dispensing certain ones. On Tuesday, the Alabama Board of Medical Examiners issued an alert to doctors reminding them that research-grade peptides, ones that are not FDA approved, have not been tested, reviewed, or determined to be safe for human use. The board says doctors in the state are not permitted to administer these drugs under any circumstance. So CBS News medical correspondent Dr. Celine Gauner joins us now.
So you also, let's talk about that term, FDA approved, right? To become something that is FDA approved, yeah, typically it is something that has been tested. We know sort of like longevity, right? Generally, right? That's not always the case. But there are, as anybody who knows about the history of things getting FDA approved, sometimes there's some political stuff and some also posturing and lobbying for things not to be particularly FDA approved. So that's not a 100% means it's either good or bad just because it is either FDA approved or not. So there's always a little bit of nuance with this, even something like that that's FDA approved. So just always keep that in mind. I'm not saying that is or is not, right? But keep that in mind.
She's also the editor at large for public health at KFF Health News. So, doctor, what are peptides and what are the concerns with using them?
Peptides are small chains of amino acids, the building blocks of protein. So your body synthesizes these naturally. For example, insulin is a peptide. They can also be synthesized by pharmaceutical companies. So, for example, Ozempic is a peptide. Those are FDA-approved drugs, Ozempic and so on. But there's a whole other group of peptides that have not been tested or approved for use in people. So they're sold online. They're labeled for research use only. And people are injecting them for weight loss, for muscle, for bulking up, for anti-aging purposes. Alabama is one of many states now, over a dozen states, that have said to doctors, stop prescribing these. These are not safe. The FDA had previously sent out warning letters as well. and at least one doctor is already facing federal charges.
So some so-called wellness influencers are pushing these on social media.
So-called
you mentioned some of the
wellness
reasons why.
influencers.
Why are they doing this, and why is this a problem?
So just last night, I actually searched TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube to see what had been posted about this in the past month. I found more than 400 videos promoting peptide injections with over 14 million views. And a lot of the people posting aren't just fans, they're making money off of this. So they sign up as affiliates for peptide sellers, and then they post.
And doctors and the pharmacy, doctors in the pharmacy industry and things that are FDA approved are not making money off the stuff that is FDA approved, right? Just think about that, right? So this is, just because people are making money off of something doesn't necessarily makes it bad, because the people who are making these claims, which are also the people who are like, oh, we trust the pharmacy industry and everything that's FDA approved. Well, they're also making money because we know how our healthcare system works.
Before and after videos and include a discount code, and every sale earns them a cut. So what looks like a personal story is actually an advertisement.
All right. So as you can see, there are people. All right. And this one is kind of similar, but it kind of paints you're going to see some like actors and stuff like that. You're going to see more kind of like the influencer side of these things.
Why was I so late to the game on peptides? Like, everybody's doing that.
This is my first morning trying peptides.
From the wellness world to those obsessed with fitness, tonight one word keeps popping up: peptides.
This is the newest thing that I've included into my routine.
These two peptides have changed my life. Let's talk about it.
Peptides are protein building blocks involved in a range of body functions. They're made naturally in the body, but can also be synthesized in a lab and injected. And now that category is exploding in popularity.
Like, what is your stack of peptides that you like?
So I do
just even the way that she said it, like what is the stack of peptides that you like, right? It's like, there are certain levels of this. Definitely, this is looking at the other side of things, like the kind of people see a shortcut to things, and and obviously there are ways to optimize, and there's nothing wrong with that. But like the bad side of this is people using this as like shortcuts to things, right? And they're almost like, oh, what's the way you just said it, what stack are you on, right? It's just, I don't know, it just comes off to me just like so like nonchalant, like it's the latest. And what's your favorite coffee? What matcha do you, what's your new matcha order? Just like
I do NAD.
Okay.
The
Do you
IV
do the
or
IV or the shot?
Enthusiastic users, wellness influencers, and some celebrities claiming they can reduce wrinkles, boost muscles, and more. Even the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is among those.
Yeah, make America healthy again, baby.
Singing peptides praises.
Man,
I've used them myself and used them with really good effect.
And now the FDA, under his leadership, has announced it will convene a panel in July that could expand the list of approved peptides. But despite the buzz, many doctors warn the research does not back up the hype. At least not yet. Whether it's for building muscle, fighting the effects of aging, healing an injury.
That's the key word, not yet, right? So whenever you get into a new medical or something that's come out new, right? New, especially the medical, anything that we put in our bodies, right? You have to, first of all, we have to understand what are the long-term ramifications, because we're putting something in our body that we may not have been doing before and there's been time and there's been numerous examples of things that we thought were good for us, but then turned out that the long-term effects for it were not worth it. So that is a key word. Whenever you're going into a new industry, especially something that we're putting in our bodies, we definitely need to know that there may be potential risks that we may not know of yet. And it takes time to figure those out and to know what the long-term effects are.
Are those all potential possibilities that just haven't been confirmed yet?
Yes. I think that that's kind of a good way to think about it. It's definitely a leap to say, well, if it does this in a laboratory animal, it's going to do this in a human. You can't say that.
The Biden administration cracked down on peptides, classifying more than a dozen as having significant safety risks pending further evaluation.
All right. So I always think this is funny, that they're like, oh, the Biden administration cracked down on this, but yet we're giving out vaccines, mandating vaccines throughout the government. I was forced to get vaccines when I was in the military, and we definitely did not know the long-term effects of the COVID vaccine. So this is definitely a very hypocritical statement, especially from the Biden administration, just because anybody who's ever been in a job, especially the military, where you're forced to take experimental brand new medication, and we do not quite know the long-term effects. It's kind of, almost ironic that they care this much about peptides when they should have cared more about the vaccines.
And out of the potentially millions of peptides, the FDA has only approved a small fraction, including semaglutide, which is used in GLP-1s like Ozempic. Secretary Kennedy says that strict regulation has driven people to unregulated, shadowy markets. But many doctors say it's premature to roll back restrictions.
We really do not have a wide body of human data on this.
Not at all. Not at all. No. Until that's studied, the right way, I just think it's a leap and potentially dangerous to start, having them made without regulation and oversight.
So sometimes regulation, well, I actually do think that in a lot of different industries, regulation oversight, when done well, is good for the overall community, but that's only when it's done properly, right? And let's go back to Be Dangerous comment about how I talked about how breakfast and everything like that used to be this meal, and then we were on the food pyramid, where having carbs or your wheats was the most important part, right? And that's probably one of the reasons why America has led to such a obesity problem, right? And that was lobbied by like Kellogg's. There was this huge craze where before we understood that it was calories that made us fat, the sugar industry lobbied basically all these doctors to say that it's the fat content in food is what makes people fat, right? And so they used to do that's when they create all these fat-free things that were loaded with basically sugar. The sugar industry basically attacked fat, and we got all these fat-free things. And what it was they actually had sugar in them to replace it, because obviously you took the fat out, you took out now it tasted horrible. We just put a bunch of sugar in it and raised the calories, and that's why one of the reasons people got fat, because it was lobbied by the sugar industries, right? So there are regulations and oversight, but only if they're done properly, and they're not lobbied by companies who are trying to make more money off of essentially what could eventually be an epidemic, which was kind of like the obesity crisis in the United States. So that is something to keep in mind, right? When we're like, okay, well, we need oversight and restrictions. Yes, if done properly, right? But luckily, in modern times, you've got a lot of these independent companies and doctors and research institutes who are actually able to kind of do research a lot quicker. And because of social media, right? Because a lot of science needs to be peer reviewed, right? If someone does a study and they're like, these are the findings that I had, it's within the scientific community or that particular subcommittee, like community like performance medicine, to come in and test that theory and try to disprove it, right? That's how proper good science is done. And that needs to be done. And with social media, it's happening quicker and quicker, because you've got all these doctors on here, especially the performance ones, who are just jumping on all this stuff. And because of it, like, one good thing is a lot of the quick trends, or what do you want to call them, that kind of pop up, and all of a sudden they're getting debunked quicker than they used to be. So that is one good side effect to all this. So, all right. Trumpty Dumpty pushed the vax initially. Don't forget that. Well, yeah, I don't care who's in office, Republican or Democrat. Don't force me to put anything in my body, especially when it's experimental and you don't know the long-term effects. So, yeah, I agree that the vaccine was pushed, but it was not, I don't think it was mandated to government employees under Trump, but I could be wrong. I know it was definitely under Biden. And I was forced to take the vaccine or get fired from my job. All right. So you're going to hear about, there's recovery peptides, right? So, you've got things like BCP 157, TB 500. So we're going to watch another video to kind of cover some of these. Then you've got your growth hormone peptides, which is your Sermorelin, your CJC 1295, Ipamorelin, right? So you got your longevity peptides, is your NAD plus, your GHK-Cu, which these things help you to look younger, your skin, semaglutide and tirzepatide, which is your weight loss ones. These are your weight loss. This is when you hear of your Ozempic. This is the weight loss revolution. And, there's the reality of the side effects. And then obviously we're going to get into what is the possibility with causing long-term effects. And usually whenever we're talking about causing potential long-term effects is, does it cause cancer? Obviously there's a number of different things that you could have, but that usually what it all usually boils down to, does it cause cancer? And so if we were to get into, all right. So does anybody know Dr. Mike? So we're going to get into somebody who is going to talk about it. Dr. Mike is he is in this particular field. I forget exactly what he's a medical, I'd have to look it up. I'm going to look it up while we're watching this video, but this is Dr. Mike on peptides, and he's going to kind of help explain.
When people ask the question of what peptides do I take to grow muscle, the answer to the question is there are no peptides that grow muscle. If there were very powerful muscle-growing peptides around, almost every enhanced bodybuilder would probably be strength. And today we're going to talk about peptides. Specifically, do peptides grow muscle, and kind of a grand tour of all the common classes of peptides. I must get asked at least once a day, sometimes more, hey, what do you think of peptides? What about peptides? Peptides? What peptide should I be taking? You on peptides, bro? Peptides for muscle growth?
Silver Soldier says, did you see Dr. Mike running? I would never take this man's advice. All right. We take a lot of advice from doctors that, you have to understand where your advice is coming from. I would never take Dr. Mike's advice on absolutely running, right? But if he's a very scientifically driven person when it comes to the optimization and performance of essentially lifting and bodybuilding and strength. So definitely he's not an expert in running, especially if you've seen him run or any sort of calisthenics or anything like that. But the man does know about growth, and he is really big into the science. So I feel like in this particular situation, we are going to hear what he has to say, but then we've got some other opinions from other people, because we don't take our research for just one person, especially if it's confirmation bias.
Peptides are absolutely trending. So we're going to take this video to answer the biggest questions about what peptides are, how they work, what they do, what they don't do yet, how safe they are, and especially if they grow some goddamn muscle or not, people. That's why we're here. The chemical definition of peptides has to go first. Peptides are amino acids.
All right, so Dr. Mike Israetel holds a PhD in sport physiology.
Acid chains, typically less than 50 amino acids in length. Much over that is something that would be described as a complete protein. They function primarily as signaling molecules in the body, binding to receptors and telling the cells that those receptors are on to do some kind of stuff, like grow more muscle or grow less muscle or speed up the metabolism or what have you. Many hormones in your body naturally are already peptides. Insulin is a peptide. GLP-1 is a peptide. And that means they're a part of normal human physiology and slot right into interacting with the human body super, super swell. Synthetic peptides, manufactured ones that are used in medicine, are engineered versions, oftentimes, of these natural signaling molecules modified to make them more stable, have longer half-lives, or have more intense receptor sensitivity so that when they clip into a receptor, shit really, really happens. Getting these peptides from the vial into your body isn't as easy as just eating the vial and chewing the glass and swallowing the powder, though I know that sounds tempting.
Dr. Mike's humor is, it is what it is.
Most peptides are injected subcutaneously, which means just under the skin, because the digestive tract breaks down amino acid chains. It's one of its number one jobs. So if you just drink a bunch of peptides, you're wasting a lot of money. So they have to be injected almost certainly for the time being. Some of these peptides are modified with fatty acid chains or binding domains to increase their half-life or make them clip on to other molecules better and thus also increase their half-life. There are a few that have nasal introduction, or they have dermal introduction where you rub a cream on and you get the peptides, but that tends to be inconsistent in bioavailability and is pretty rare. There are emerging technologies that are going to allow peptides to be oral, but they're, again, for the purpose of this video, as when we're making it, very rare. When you're taking peptides, if you plan on taking peptides, you're probably going to have to do some injecting pretty regularly.
I'm not saying he's wrong. He's just all jacked up on roids and he's ass. Yeah. So like with anything, you understand the source where the information is coming from and take it for what it is.
Now, in order to inject peptides, you have to make sure you're managing that injection process well. So we have to talk about how they're stored and managed.
Because if, I feel like one thing that this guy does do well, right? I would not personally follow his own, how he works out and what he believes in for personal fitness, but this man definitely does explain science very well. For someone who, like me, things are hard to understand.
Peptides are biologically active amino acid chains, meaning they are really prone to degradation from heat, from light, from agitation, which means you show them a meme they hate, brain rot, they get pissed. No, sorry. It means when you shake the vial, then literally parts of the chemicals can fall apart or bind together in a way we don't like. And of course, contamination. So if you shove a needle in there and pull it back out, shove a needle, pull it back out, bacteria gets in there, the bacteria contaminates everything, and then you don't have any peptides, you just have an infection waiting to happen. Most peptides, once they are mixed and have water in them to prepare them for injection, require refrigeration between 2 and 8 degrees Celsius, which is really cold. And once reconstituted, they have a half-life as they're reconstituted. So you typically get them in a freeze-dried powder.
All right, we're going to skip forward. You guys can watch this stuff. All right. Storage and
What are examples of peptides, just to get you guys thinking about it? You've heard a lot of these before. Tirzepatide, DPC-157, Sermorelin, MOTS-C, TB-500. But all of these are very different compounds. And in my estimate, 5 classes of different types of peptides exist currently. And that accounts for, maybe 90% of all the peptides that are around. So let's talk about these classes of peptide effect and make some sense out of them. Because when people say peptides, they are usually unaware of the fact that a lot of the peptides do really, really different stuff. And there's a thing that peptides don't do hardly at all, which we're going to talk about and is a big, big part of this video. Class number 1, I would term the modern weight loss drugs. These are semaglutide, tirzepatide, and soon to be approved retatrutide. They are amazing for health and weight loss, but do not have any anabolic muscle growing effects. They just don't. I wish they did. Number 2 class are what I term the recovery peptides. These are things like DPC-157, TB-500. People inject these to heal from injury faster. They have mixed results and mixed safety data for rapid injury healing, but also have seemingly no muscle growth effects.
So I want to get in here and talk about, so there is I couldn't find the video. I was trying to find the video for this. So an example of potential side effects I believe it's BP157 that is a peptide that helps with your recovery by helping repair cartilage. One of the peptides it is, I'm not 100% is BP157, but it does, the peptide that they use to helps repair your cartilage and helps you recovery, does it by increasing your vascularity. So while this is a good thing for that particular function, one of the things that they're worried about, and this is something that you need to keep in mind when considering essentially peptides, is that they are trying to study the long-term effects, because one of the things that they're worried about with this particular peptide is because while increased vascularity helps the recovery of cartilage, it also increased vascularity helps the growth of something else, and that's tumors. So people are worried that while taking this particular peptide, the one that increased vascularity help with cartilage, may also have a longer lasting effect of maybe you don't know that you have tumors in your body. And if you are, you're actually increasing their growth. So this is something to keep in mind of possible long-term effects that we're still trying to figure out. And with anything, keep in mind if you chose to go down this route or not.
Number 3 are what I call the exercise mimetics. They replicate some part of the chemical cascade that you typically get from exercising, but they do.
All right, I can only take so much to Dr. Mike. Let's go on to somebody else. Oh, I got a better one. Yes. This is a good one. So this guy, Dr. Jones,
you've already deep into
this
it.
Guy's kind of,
and if you are, maybe you already know the problem. See, the catalog is massive, dozens of compounds, BPC, retatrutide, names.
I think he doesn't
run them on a body that.
So this guy he's also a leading guy, a doctor in this particular industry, and
at sleeping,
really good at explaining what's going on.
Well, eating and training reasonably, then they do remarkable things. I see it all the time. But
all right, so we talk about foundation. Okay.
LP1s. This is where most people first step into the peptide world. So it's where we're going to start. There's 3 names that you definitely have heard: retatrutide, tirzepatide, semaglutide. The biggest mistakes that people make is assuming that they're 3 strengths of one thing: weak, medium, strong. But they're not. They're 3 different tools. Let's start with retatrutide. Reta is a triple agonist, and it works on 3 receptors all at the same time: GLP-1, GIP, and glucagon. Appetite and blood sugar, it's the 3rd receptor that makes Reta its own animal, the glucagon receptor. Glucagon does something that the other 2 don't. It turns up thermogenesis and pushes lipolysis, your body actively breaking down stored fat for fuel. I call this the glucagon effect. It's also why retatrutide can nudge your heart rate up in a way that others don't. More receptors, more power. That's the headline that everybody repeats. But here's what the hype skips. The most powerful tool isn't automatically the right one. That glucagon activation needs a body metabolically ready for it. So you run it on
jump to the beginning.
Okay, so category 2, healing and tissue repair. And it's the one that I get asked about more than anything else. BPC 157, if peptides have a celebrity, this is it. And the internet has turned it into a magic heal everything compound. So let's be clear about what it actually is. BPC stands for body protection compound, a sequence that your own body already makes, concentrated down. It's not a painkiller and it's not a cure, but it does act as a repair signal. So think of it like a patch, or more like a system-wide message, telling your body to ramp up the repair processes that it already runs. People use it for gut issues, tendon problems, soft tissue injuries that won't close out. So here's the honest version. BPC is genuinely useful, but it's a signal. It's not a guarantee. And it's only half the picture. It does its best work on injuries and tissues that doesn't get good blood flow on its own. And it works best when paired with the next compound, because what BPC doesn't cover, TB500 does. So that's the partner. Where BPC sends the repair signal, TB500 works on the structural side. It's tied to a protein called actin, the machinery that cells use to move. That's TB500's job, getting your repair cells to actually migrate to the injury site. So the healing crew gets where it needs to be. You run the 2 together and you get the Wolverine stack. You heal fast, you recovery like the injuries in a hurry. The catch though, this is the exact pairing that people are most tempted to source themselves and run blind. And repair work in tissues that you can't see is exactly where guessing on quality can bite you. That's healing, 2 categories on the board. Now, quick note, if this is the kind of breakdown that you've been looking for, do yourself a solid favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on the gets.
Quick minute, I wanted to tell you guys about the Flow Academy membership. Essentially, this is my private community. You would join the community. Now back to the video.
Okay, so category 3, growth hormone. And this is the category that I think most people get wrong because they hear growth hormone and they assume we're talking about growth hormone, human growth hormone. but they're not. All three are considered secretagogues, a long word for a simple idea. They don't put growth hormone into you externally. They signal your body to release more of its own. And that distinction is the whole point. Inject HGH directly and you override your body's controls. Use a secreting agent and your body still decides how much to release and when. It keeps the natural rhythm, the pulse.
So this is very important because a lot of people, and myself included, before I started getting into the research of this, thought that the growth hormones and the peptides were similar to HGH. And yes, this is the big difference, is secretagogues, is that it's your natural production and you're basically activating the natural production, which a lot of the side effects that come with HGH are not side effects that you're going to find in the secretagogues, which is, there's a whole number of HGH side effects. But definitely it's very interesting because when I first heard this, I sort of looped them into the same category, but they're completely different in how they do things and the side effects that come with them.
That's built-in control. That built-in control is the safety feature of this entire category. Sermorelin is the original, the OG, and the most gentle, the entry point. It nudges GH release to support sleep and recovery, and it's the one that most people start off with. And then you have CJC Ipamorelin, almost always run together. CJC raises the baseline, Ipamorelin adds a clean pulse to the top. Together, the most popular growth hormone stack for recovery, sleep, and body composition. And then you have Sermorelin, which is the specialist. It carries the most clinical track record of the entire group, known for one job, targeting visceral fat. That's the deep belly fat that's packed around your organs. If that's the goal, Sermorelin is the sharp tool for it. The real trade-off for the whole category, your body controls the release, is the safety feature, but it's also the ceiling. These work with your physiology, so they're steadier than HGH. They don't hand you HGH-sized results. That's the deal. And it's a fair one. That's growth hormone. Okay, next up, category 4, fat loss and exercise. And where I call out the single most overhyped peptide on this list. And right away, notice something. This is not category 1. Category 4 is a different animal. Those 3 are exercise mimics, keyword mimic. They nudge the same pathway that your body switches on when you train. People call this exercise in the bottle, and that name matters because a bottle is not a workout. Now, back in the cold open, I told you one peptide here is almost pure hype. Here it is, 9604. But stay with me. The hype isn't the peptide. It's how people think it works. The story online is you take AOD and the fat just comes off, right? Like GLP-1s. You run it solo, no strategy, and most people are underwhelmed, and that's the hype talking. So here's what actually unlocks it, is a fragment of human growth hormone, the piece tied to fatty mobilization. And it does its best work when paired with the right conditions. You run it alongside therapeutic strategic fasting when your body is already primed to mobilize fat. And that same compound that did nothing before in the trials starts doing real work. AOD isn't a magic bullet peptide on its own. It's a technique peptide. The compound was never the problem. Running it without a strategy was. A quick cut check here. Before this video, did you think AOD used right? They deliver. Now, quick thing, while we've got momentum here, this video is the map, what each peptide does and where it lives. But I already know the question a lot of you have. How do you stack these? How do you track them? Which one to combine? Which one do you start with next? Okay, 5, longevity, the anti-aging shelf. There's 2 compounds to think of, and the first one is one of my favorites on this whole list, GHK-copper. This is the copper peptide, a small copper binding sequence that your body makes naturally and makes less of as you age. It's best known for skin, collagen, firmness, the visible stuff. But it also acts as a repair signal and an antioxidant, calming the low-grade inflammation that quietly drives a lot of aging. So here's what makes GHK copper interesting on this map. It belongs in 2 categories at once, a longevity compound, but also a repair compound. And that overlook is why one of the most popular stacks actually pairs GHK copper with the BPC and the TB500, known as the glow stack. The only real caveat, its benefits is the steady, compounding kind, not an overnight switch. Then there's epitalin, which is the longevity wildcard. It's tied to the pineal gland and your circadian rhythm, which is your internal clock. It carries the boldest anti-aging claims on this entire list. Things like telomere support, the protective caps on the ends of your DNA. Now here's the real read. The human evidence on epitalin is thin and usually run in short cycles. File it under promising and interesting. We've seen some pretty cool things happen too as well. Of course, not proven yet. Okay, so that's longevity. Categories 1 through 5, now up on the board. Category 6, cognitive peptides for your brain. And I get it. This is the category people are most skeptical of. Like, what can I really do for this guy, right? A peptide that makes me think better sounds like a stretch. So here's how to sort the 3 that matter. C-Link and C-Max, they come as a pair. Same research lineage, best understood
There's
together.
only 2 more
Think of them as the
categories of this.
calm and focus duo. C-Link learns calm, the edge off anxiety without the fog. C-Max leans focus, mental clarity, drive, the sense that your brain shifted gears. A lot of people run them together. One takes the tension down, and the other brings sharpness up. Now, DECA, this is the heavy hitter and the one to respect the most. It's studied for something far more ambitious than focus. We call this synaptogenesis, the actual formation of new connections between brain cells, between neurons. That's freaking amazing. And that is a powerful thing to be reaching for. DECA is potent. It's early in its research, and it's not a, let me just try it casually on a Tuesday type compound. Big upside, and the most reason of anything here to want guidance before you run it. Okay, so we're 6 categories deep. And let's see if the map is starting to stick. If a friend said they wanted something for mental focus, could you tell them right now which category to look in and which peptide might be the best option? Take a second, think about that. If that came to you fast, then the system's underrated job that I promised you back at the start. DSIP is associated with supporting deeper, more restorative sleep. Specifically, that deep, slow wave stage where your body does its actual peptide on this board, gets the conditions that it needs to do its job. Crank your immune system up and it doesn't shut it down either. It actually regulates, it modulates, nudging towards balance. Your thymus, the gland.
All right. I want to get to this.
Or the cognitive stack on its own. If there's one category that you want me to take all the way down to the studs, let me know in the comments the name of that category, one sorted by what they actually do. Before I let you go, there's one question this video hasn't touched, and it might be the most important one of all. Where do you actually get these compounds from? Go looking for peptides we covered online, and you'll keep running into the same 3 words. Research use only. That label is not the fine print. That product was made for a lab bench or the gray market gamble, and then the pharmacy grade version made by a licensing compounding 503A pharmacy held to real standards made by an actual person. Same compound on paper, a completely different level of certainty about what you're getting in and what you're putting into your body. So before I tell you what to do with all of this, certainty.
Let's go back to this there. So so when you hear the research grade, that's when you commonly hear the gray market. That's whenever you see the term gray market, right? So you get your pharmacy grade, things that are the FDA approved. So there are obviously some benefits to sticking with the pharmacy grade, the FDA approved, because there's a lot more research. You're going to have as much access to a lot of things that are basically cutting edge, if you will. But anything we're dealing with in this particular space with cutting edge, there are definitely risks. So the research grade or the gray area is your research use only. It's a lab bench product. So it's a gamble. All right. So the last thing I wanted to go over is I wanted to go over this one, which I felt was interesting because this guy covers the kind of the lady who's recently on the Sean Ryan show, who's kind of like fear mongering, was basically like, hey, basically peptides cause cancer, right?
Almost had a stroke watching this.
Not one human randomized controlled trial has ever been done on peptides. One of the peptides, it caused death. It failed when they found out how dangerous it was, so the FDA cut it completely.
So a buddy of mine sent me a clip from the Sean Ryan show last week. Now, I'm a big fan of some of Sean Ryan's stuff. I actually come from a military family. My dad deployed to Afghanistan, and he instilled in me an immense appreciation for geopolitics, our veterans, and for both military history and operations. He also taught me to hate MREs, but that's a different story. So when Sean is interviewing American heroes like Marcus Luttrell, Jason Redman, and DJ Shipley, he is phenomenal. And if you haven't watched those interviews, please go do that. Those guys are American heroes. But the guest this week was a woman named Luisa Nicola, and the topic, briefly, was peptides, and specifically why you should be terrified of them. And now we've got a problem. Listen, Sean's audience is huge, and this episode has gotten a ton of views. So when somebody walks onto that stage and then tells the entire internet that BPC 157 is going to give you cancer, that the FDA shut down clinical trials because peptides are too dangerous, and that, quote, not one randomized controlled trial has ever been done on peptides, people listen. They make decisions based on it. And God forbid, sometimes those people happen to serve in FDA leadership. So we need to set the record straight, because it's this exact type of hand-wavy fear-mongering that got growth hormone yanked off the shelf for longevity use back in 1990. And
this is a great point, by the way. He's absolutely right. So yeah, like fear-mongering has definitely led to things that should have been approved or FDA approved, never to get approved just because of this type of posturing. So this is, while some of this there's a possibility some of it could be true, this is definitely something to keep in mind when this is why you try to get as many different opinions on something as you can.
Currently stands to threaten patient access to peptides in anticipation of the FDA's July PCAC meeting. What's up, guys? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Alex. I'm a board-certified urologist, fellowship trained in men's health with expertise in TRT peptides and what's generally becoming known as performance medicine. I've been writing about, prescribing, and watching patients use peptides and other PEDs for over a decade. I read the literature, I see the outcomes, and I know these compounds as well as anyone. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you the highest yield clips from this over 3-hour conversation. I'm going to play what Louisa actually said, and then I'm going to walk you through what the published data actually shows, and then you can decide who knows what they're talking about. And while you're listening, go ahead and drop a comment for me. Have you ever taken BPC 157, TB 500, or any other peptide? Did they give you turbo cancer like this guest implies? And on a more serious note, what do you think of this type of format? This is going to be a new one for us, and I honestly want y'all's feedback. Ronick, let's get into it.
In theory, they can do well. We've seen them, in my studies, but not one human randomized control trial has ever been done on peptides, which is why it makes it so dangerous. We don't know what the safety and efficacy is.
All right, starting off with a banger. Not one human randomized controlled trial has ever been done on peptides. Ronick, you want to fact check that one for me? Okay, this is the kind of statement that sounds confident when it's put into a podcast clip, but it's also flagrantly, demonstrably, and embarrassingly false. Let's just start with the obvious. Insulin, a peptide. Isolated all the way back in 1921. It's been the subject of more randomized controlled trials than maybe any other molecule in modern medicine. The DCCT trial alone followed 1,441 patients over 9 years. Semaglutide, also known as Ozempic and Wegovy, also happens to be a peptide. Sustain 6 had 3,297 patients. Select had 17,604, and then the Step 1 trial had 1,961 patients.
Yep. So basically making a statement that's nowhere near true, because it's definitely a lot of peptides have had controlled trials.
Okay, so what is this even? Okay, level.
So you are not a fan of peptides.
I am not a fan. I went out really public with this.
Okay, so what does this even mean? I am against peptides. A peptide is just a chain of amino acids, 2 or more amino acids linked by a peptide bond. That's the entire definition. Saying I'm against peptides is like saying I'm against pills, or I'm against vegetables, or I'm against music. It's not a scientific position. It's a vibe, and a pretty terrible one at that.
He's not wrong. It's definitely kind of stupid. Actually, we can see what he's going to say about
the DARE program?
Yeah, yes, the DARE program worked out super great growing up. Just to recap, the category peptide includes everything from insulin, which she literally calls a breakthrough peptide earlier in this exact same episode, along with every single GLP-1 agonist on the market, like semaglutide, liraglutide, tirzepatide, and what's coming down the pipe in the form of retatrutide. It also includes things like oxytocin, which is used every day on labor and delivery floors in the United States. It also includes things like vasopressin and desmopressin, which we use for diabetes insipidus.
Which doesn't surprise you, because most of these peptides are natural things within the body that we already produce. All right, let's go to the next clip.
And anybody telling you the entire class is dangerous is actually telling you that they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
What we don't know yet is it's doing this by inducing vascularization, meaning that it's helping you.
All right, so I talked about this earlier about the potential of vascularization and what it may possibly. This is something, I'm not saying this is actually true, but this is just something to bring up, that these are things to think about in this particular process, right? And so we'll get into this and what his particular opinion on it. But these are always something to take into consideration of the long-term effects of, maybe it might help something, but it may not. But let's just see what the doctor has to say.
Around the cells of injury, it's helping you form new blood vessels. When you form new blood vessels, what happens? You get oxygen and nutrients. It's great, right? Better healing.
Because this is, to be honest, this is the exact clip that I saw earlier. And so I was interested to see his particular take on this, because, right, you have someone who believes in this, and right, and now we're going to have somebody who's a doctor in this particular field have the sort of opposing are a different view on this particular situation.
But it can't detect whether it's causing vascularization on a cancer cell. And how does cancer survive and grow and proliferate? It forms blood vessels to feed itself. Cancer cells are so hungry when they form a tumor site. They say, okay, great, now we need blood vessels to survive. So they form its own little blood vessel supply, and that's what grows and that's what metastasizes, because they're like, yes, they become so greedy and so hungry. These tumor cells, they go out.
Ron, this is so asinine. I can't even take it. Like, oh, blood vessels. Oh, that immediately is going to cause cancer. Yeah, you know what cancer cells also need? Glucose. Should we all just starve ourselves so there's no glucose in our bloodstream? Like, what is she even talking about? Okay, guys, let's steel man this argument for a little bit because, yeah, it's her main mechanistic argument. And I'll admit, it sounds scary, but let's actually dig into this for a second. Yes, BPC 157 promotes angiogenesis. Yes, tumors require angiogenesis to grow past anything more than a millimeter. And that's not new. That's something called the Folkman hypothesis. And it's been around since like 1971. But the freaking massive leap that she's taking is that because BPC 157 can improve blood flow, therefore it will fuel hidden cancers. I cannot overemphasize what a massive logical and scientific leap that is. We're talking like Grand Canyon levels of logical disconnect here.
Not gonna lie, I like this guy. I like I like anybody who really likes to really point out stupidity and bringing in some good logic and a great way to explain it.
Here. And what she's doing is totally glossing over the fact that there are two completely different flavors of angiogenesis. The first is physiologic angiogenesis. This is what your body does when you cut yourself or you run a marathon. It is tightly regulated, self-limited, and carefully prodded along by signals like VEGF, FGF, and eNOS. This is the system that BPC 157 nudges forward. But then there is pathologic tumor angiogenesis, and this is a totally different ballpark. This type of angiogenesis is dysregulated, leaky, chaotic vasculature driven by tumor-secreted growth factors that have totally hijacked the system. Now, are some of those same signals present? Yeah, but they've been totally dysregulated. And guess what? BPC 157 in published animal models has shown, wait for it, anti-tumor properties in colitis-associated cancer models. Not pro-tumor, anti.
Interesting. Okay. So one, I didn't actually know there was two different types of angiogenesis processes. And see, this is why if you see one clip, you don't just believe it. You go to the opposite side of a particular view and you hear both sides of the argument.
Because guess what? Sometimes you need blood flow in order to deliver the immune system messengers that actually kill tumors. Tumor biology is amazing.
All right. So basically he's saying that basically there's no claim in what she's saying. But I am enjoying what she's saying than what he's saying in response is actually.
First of all, I don't know if you know this, but it failed. It failed its trial. You do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It failed when they found out how dangerous it was. So the FDA cut it completely. They said this is too dangerous to move forward.
I love his reactions in the corner.
Okay.
That's why there's not one randomized control trial done.
I'm going to pull out what little remaining hair I have left. Guys, I can't sugarcoat this. This is a straight up lie with no basis in reality. Listen to me closely. There is no record of the FDA ever shutting down a BPC 157 trial because the drug was too dangerous. That never happened. Here is the actual BPC 157 human trial history. There have been 2 attempts. Pleva ran one back in the early 2000s. It was a phase 1 trial in healthy volunteers, then with a phase 2 in ulcerative colitis patients, with abstracts that were presented at Digestive Disease Week, and the full manuscripts were unfortunately never published. Then the program died in 2 rounds of pharma acquisitions thereafter. It was a tragedy of corporate acquisition. It wasn't shut down by the FDA due to safety issues. And then Pharmacotherapia, a different pharmaceutical company, ran another phase 1 trial in Tijuana, of all places, back in 2015. They looked at 42 healthy volunteers looking for just whether or not BPC 157 is safe. They actually submitted some results in 2016, but then pulled the submission. And if you look it up right now on clinicaltrials.gov, it's currently unknown. Now, here is where I can concede a legitimate critique, one which Louisa didn't bother to make because I don't think she's ever bothered to look this up or read about it. Both of these human trials were sponsored by Croatian companies tied to the same researcher who's been the dominant academic voice on this molecule in 30 years, Predrag Sikoric. So independent replication of human BPC 157 work doesn't really exist, and yeah, that's a problem. So, of course, I would love to see a US-sponsored, FDA-supervised, IND-enabled trial run by an academic medical center with no commercial entanglements. But here's what's not true. The FDA never shut anything down. The FDA was never running these trials.
That's the big part, is that the fact that the FDA didn't shut it down, and she's claiming to, because when she's making the claim that the FDA shut this down, that's a huge thing, right? That's saying like it's so bad, the government, when it actually was not even the case.
There was never an IND on file. None of these trials happened on US soil. The agency had no role in stopping a single one of them. So when Louisa goes on one of the largest podcasts in America and says the FDA cut it because it was too dangerous to move forward in human studies, that straight up never happened. The drug never entered the US regulatory pathway in the first place. Oh, and here's the next part of that story, which she really doesn't know. On April 22nd, well before this podcast was released, and I'm guessing before it was even recorded, the FDA officially removed BPC 157 from Category 2. That's the significant safety concern compounding restriction list. And the reason for that was given by the FDA itself. The nominations were withdrawn by the nominators. Translation, the people who put it on the bad list took their nomination back because the safety case to keep it there couldn't be supported. AKA the same agency that she claims shut down the BPC 157 trials, which never happened, is publicly admitting that they don't have any data showing adverse health effects. So while Louisa is on Sean's show telling everybody the FDA shut down BPC 157 because it's lethal, the FDA is actively doing the exact opposite. Reality is moving in the exact opposite direction of her story.
Right, we're almost done.
What did Huberman text you about?
He believed that I got something wrong, which was in one study, and I've put this out on social media. It's funny when you do, a 1 hour long episode and the thing that gets clipped, there needs more nuance, right? And what got clipped was I mentioned that in a phase 2 clinical trial, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it was melanotan. It was one of the peptides. It caused death in one person, and I stated that. But I think when it got clipped, it said that, I was referring to every, BPC 157, which I wasn't. You look at the full clip on YouTube, but, he wanted to correct me, and I recorrected him and said, well, I didn't say that. And because I think he's a proponent of peptides. I'm not sure if he.
Well, that's where I got my doctor from. With some recommendation from Andrew.
Yeah.
Which I love that doctor. I love that doctor.
No, look, he's phenomenal. We've known each other for so long.
Okay, so I had to do some digging to figure this one out. We all know Dr. Andrew Huberman, Stanford-trained neuroscientist, and he runs one of the largest health podcasts in the world. And apparently, he privately reached out to her after she appeared on Diary of a CEO to correct her. That's pretty notable. And that doesn't happen when there's nothing wrong with what she said. So what she's saying is that her original comment in her Diary of a CEO interview was about melanotan 2 in a phase 2 trial death, that Huberman corrected her, and then she recorrected him. Okay, fine. Well, I went ahead and read that entire podcast transcript, and the word melanotan doesn't appear. The word BPC 157 doesn't appear. The phrase phase 2 trial does not appear. What she actually was discussing in that segment was IV anti-amyloid drugs for Alzheimer's, the deaths from microhemorrhages in those trials, and the amyloid cascade hypothesis. She is retroactively assigning a story to a podcast episode that doesn't contain that story. And here's the pharmacology problem. The drugs that she was actually describing on Diary of a CEO are aducanumab, lecanemab, and donanemab. These are monoclonal antibodies. You can tell because they've got MAB in their name. They're roughly 150,000
There's too many big words.
They are freaking huge. About 1,300 amino acids each. A peptide, by definition, is a short chain, usually less than 50 amino acids. If you're looking at textbooks, in America, they need to be under 40 amino acids. Lecanemab is to BPC 157, is what a 747 is to a paper airplane. We're talking about a different drug class, a different regulatory pathway, and a different mechanism. So whatever Huberman texted her about, I'm willing to bet it was probably about calling antibodies peptides, not about melanotan. Oh, and just to close the loop, the melanotan claim that she just invented to cover for her original error is also wrong. Clinivel halted phase 2 development of melanotan 2 for cardiovascular side effects, aka hypertension, and sexual dysfunction, aka erections that just.
So I'm gonna go off. Obviously, I don't know this chick, and go out and say on a limb, if I had to take an educated guess on based off of what I know about people, this chick is making sounds like a series of claims, and then the fact that Andrew Huberman, who's one of like the most renowned like neuroscientists, especially in the modern health industry, he didn't blast her on a video, reached out to her privately. It sounds like she doesn't know how to take criticism, and somebody who doesn't know how to take criticism doesn't learn. So it doesn't surprise me that she's going to make multiple different levels of gaffes and errors, because she can't even take a criticism to one of the most well-renowned neuroscientists in the country. Oh, Alex Moen, thank you. Appreciate you. We're gonna back
aka
that up.
hypertension, and sexual dysfunction, aka erections that just wouldn't stop. There is no documented phase 2 trial fatality. The cover story for the wrong claim is itself a wrong claim. Okay, I think we've all seen enough, and here's where I land on all of this. Listen, Luisa Nicola is not stupid. She's articulate, she has stage presence, and she's clearly read some of the literature. No part of my reaction was personal. We've never met, and I am sure she is a lovely human being. But her statements are wildly out of step with reality. And they aren't just he said, she said debates. They're just flat wrong. And apparently, when she gets corrected publicly, she manufactures another false cover story instead of just taking accountability.
So for me, that's a huge alarm bell, because you have to be able to, you have to always know that always have to have a level of humility whenever you're like learning something or going across in some sort of endeavor, which is like either making yourself better or learning a new skill. And if you do not take in the concept that you don't know what you don't know, because you're never going to learn, because there's the only thing that's more dangerous than somebody who doesn't know something is somebody who claims to know something and doesn't, right? So don't be afraid to say like, hey, I don't know. And obviously this chick, this is the vibe I'm getting based off the other comments, and that she's also made, is that she's definitely somebody who struggles with criticism and admitting that she doesn't know something. And those people are never the most knowledgeable in whatever industry they're in. So, all right. So let's finish this up. So, all right. So we've already sort of talked about where this is all going. What are the reality of the side effects? Every intervention has its trade-offs. There is no free lunch. So the cancer question, they talked about an angiogenesis, existing tumors versus causing tumors. You see that there are two different types of angiogenesis, which were talked about. And right now, there is no evidence that leads to say otherwise. But with a lot of things, we need more time, right? So there's some research been done. If you want to go into that and you want to take the risk, like, hey, we don't know exactly the long-term effects. Hey, that's all on you. At the end of the day, that's your decision, right? But that's just something you need to take into consideration if you are going to go down this route of essentially further optimization and dealing with peptides, TRT, because a lot of the things is we want to increase our performance, but it's about longevity. And what is the future of longevity, right? Is it hormone optimization, peptides, stem cells, regenerative medicine, personalized medicine? So, but when we still break this down, you have to remember that let's think of this as the tier system within human performance protocols, right? So tier system of human performance. We're really sucking this. All right. So when we're breaking this down, it is the tier system of the human performance protocols, right? These tier systems are, it's the most important part. You need to have these before you can go down to the next tier, right? Tier 1, sleep, strength training, cardio, that's your VO2 max, your nutrition, and your health body composition. If you don't have any of these things, if you don't have a foundation for tier 1, what you do in the next tiers is not really going to matter, right? The tier 2 of the human's performance protocol, stress management, recovery, mobility, and blood work, because you need to know your blood work. If you want to, optimize something, and if you don't know where your blood work is, there's nothing they can do, because they need to know it before you could ever be prescribed anything at all, right? Your next 3 is your tier 3 of the human performance protocol is supplements, right? That's your creatine, that's your protein, which are obviously most common word in the industry is protein, right? If you that's where you go, like, increasing naturally reoccurring things within your body. And we know, like, especially through creatine and protein, there are no adverse side effects. There's so many great positive side effects that come from creatine and protein. Obviously there's other types of supplements, but and then the next one is your TRT, right? Your testosterone replacement therapy. This is your tier 4 of the human performance protocol. So we are and we're using this in the getting it to a physiological level, not a super physiological level, right? We're trying to get it to its optimal level, which was there's probably somewhere between 800 to 1,000 of your total testosterone level to reach that most optimum level of probably when you're at your most high athletic, you're an elite athlete in your early 20s. That's where we want that testosterone level, because you want the added benefits that come from having your testosterone at that level. And then your final lowest tier of the human performance protocol is the tier 5, which is the peptides, right? Because most people chasing tier 5 are neglecting the tiers above it, especially tier 1. And tier 1 is the foundation of the human performance protocol. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have your tier 1, which is your sleep, your strength, your cardio, your nutrition, and your health body composition, right? Especially your nutrition and your health and your sleep, anything you do here is going to be a waste of money and a waste of time. So, because everybody wants the secret, everybody wants the shortcut. The truth is, this protocol isn't sexy. Lift weights, do cardio, eat quality food, sleep, manage stress, build discipline, build purpose. If medically appropriate, use modern medicine to optimize what you've already built, right? Have to have the foundation. Modern medicine can help you to optimize it, because no hormone, no peptide, no supplement or biohack is ever going to replace discipline. And that's what the tier 1 of the human performance protocol is built by, right? You need discipline in order for these things to truly help you in a long form factor, in longevity, to live a longer, better life, not just a shortcut to where you're going to do things that are going to cause permanent harm, have regret, or just crush your wallet. So, well, anyways, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. If you haven't liked, comment, subscribe, join the channel. If you want to support me even further, consider becoming a member. And also link in my bio if you guys are looking for any training, whether it's physical fitness, mental resilience, mental just drive, no quit attitudes, or even want selection prep. Feel free, book a consultation with me, and I'd be happy to try to give you the best help and put you in the right direction, and no cookie cutter bullshit. All right. Everything's personalized just for you guys. Anyways, I appreciate you guys, and I hope everybody has a good evening, and I will talk to you later.